Hi guys, thanks for tuning in. For today's review, we're going to take a look at the variant Playout Sky Wolverine by Square Enix. So let's take a look at the packaging first. On the front, you've got a lovely photo of the figure in action with this nice comic style treatment. And this front flap actually opens up so you can see the figure inside, nicely presented. And on this side, on the inside of the flap, there is some information and bile about the character. So if you want to read, just pause there. And on the side, very simple blue and yellow color scheme. And on the back, you've got this comic strip style panel with the figure there in various poses. And on the other side, same blue and yellow color scheme there. On the top, you've got Wolverine in big letters there. And on the bottom, not much there. So let's get this guy open and have a look at the figure inside. So on the inside there's a backing card with the display stand attached, and it's got the instructions for the display stand printed in there, and also the instructions for the accessories printed there as well, so that's quite cool. And here is the figure with all of his accessories in the plastic tray. And here are the accessories that the figure comes with. So on the figure itself, he comes with a pair of clawed open palm hands. And he also comes with a pair of closed fist claw hands, pair of closed fists. And for his left hand, he gets an open palm, kind of outstretched hands. And for the right hand, he gets his katana holding hand, and also a kind of outstretched open palm style hand. And of course he gets his katana. And all the accessories are very nicely painted, nicely weathered. And he also gets his screaming face, so shouting angry face, and that's quite nice, really nicely painted, nicely detailed. And swapping out the head is pretty straightforward. Pull the head off and put the optional head on. It is a little bit tight, so give it a good squeeze. And he looks really cool. And for his hands, they pop off the peg, so this is a straight peg, so they're pretty easy to swap around. And let's put the sword hand on. And all the accessories are pretty tight out of the packaging, so you might just have to put a little bit of force behind it. And the fingers are really stiff, so you have to be careful putting the sword in the hand. And here he is holding his sword. Very, very nice indeed. And let's take a closer look at the figure itself. Being a variant Playout Sky, obviously it's got a lot of detail and extra bits and pieces going on. And I do actually like it. It looks really nice. So he's got heaps of these armor plates. He's got shoulder armor up here. And this is actually kind of soft, so it does move out of the way. His head is very nicely sculpted. I love the angry face. I do prefer it to the kind of non-expressive stern face because it looks much more like Wolverine. The paint job is really nice. You can see the teeth inside there. And he's got texture in his suit, you can see here on the neck. So that's really cool. On the muscles, the finishing is satin or matte, so it contrasts nicely against the armor parts, which is nice. And you can see a lot of texture on the suit. which is also kind of matte compared to the glossiness of the armored parts, so that's nice. I've never really known Wolverine to be a utility belt kind of guy, but he does have a utility belt of sorts, and it comes with little pouches and things stuck on it, and these are not removable, but they do look good. Having a look at the back, more armor detail there, nicely sculpted, textured suit in there in the back, and also on his bum, very nicely sculpted. And coming down to his feet, again, nice texture on the suit and glossy treatment on the armored parts, so that's very nice. Nicely painted. You can see like different shades of yellow there, so it's not just a straight yellow, so it gives the sculpt much more depth. So the claws are very nicely done in this metallic silver, and they're very straight, but they're not stiff, so they are kind of soft, so they do move around a little bit, so you're not going to break them or injure yourself when handling his claws. And moving on to articulation, with his head, he can't really look up very much at all, which is a bit of a shame, because then you can't get him into that kind of forward leaning kind of pose, which is, yeah, not great for Wolverine, because that's kind of his signature kind of look. But he can look down quite far, and he can tilt his head from side to side and turn pretty much completely to the side. And for his shoulders, he's got a long ball joint that goes into his torso, so that gives him a bit of a butterfly joint on the shoulder, which is good. And he can lift up his arms that high, and they're nicely ratcheted, but I am scared of breaking that long ball joint, so just be careful with that joint. It's got a bicep swivel, so you can swivel forward and back, so pretty much all the way around. Single joint for the elbows, and it's nicely ratcheted as well, and it gives him a bit more than 90 degrees. And it does also rotate there as well at the elbow joint. For his wrist joint, he gets the pin and hinge and not ball joint, and peg treatment, so he can turn his hand all the way in and out and all the way around, so that's good. And moving on to his torso, he can crunch forward that far, and it's pretty good. It doesn't leave any gaps in the back, and you can stretch back that far. And again, it's really good because it doesn't leave any unsightly gaps in the front either. And he can do side to side, so that's good. And he's got waist joint, so he can rotate from his waist all the way around. And it does crunch as well, back and forth. So I think it's a big ball joint in there. And I forgot to mention earlier, his crutch piece is actually soft material, so it does kind of stretch and move out of the way. And coming down to his hips, nicely ratcheted. He can kick forward about that far and back about that far without stretching the crutch piece too much. And he can do pretty much a perfect split, so that's really good, and nice ratchets there. And he's got thigh rotation, which does disrupt the sculpt if you turn it too much. And he's got double jointed knees, which is also nicely ratcheted, and it gives him really deep bend, so that's really good. And for his ankles, he can tilt down that far, up that far, and this piece here is soft and moves out of the way. He can rotate his feet, and there is also a nice ankle pivot. And last but not least, he has a toe joint which bends just under 90 degrees. And in terms of height, he measures about 23 centimeters to the top of his head, which is about 9 inches, or 24 centimeters to the top of his mask, which is about 9.4 inches. And now for some size comparisons. First up, here he is with variant Playouts Kai Deadpool. Here he is with DC Icons Rebirth Superman. Here he is with Marvel Legends X-Men Wave Wolverine. And finally, here he is with Marvel Legends Cyclops. I'm really digging this version of the Wolverine. He looks over the top, but I think it works. And this face sculpt especially looks really good. There's heaps of detail on his sculpting, on the armor and the suit. And the articulation on this guy is pretty good. Most of the joints are ratcheted, so it'll hold poses quite nicely, especially for a relatively big figure like this. The paint job is very well done. I can't see any QC issues with my one, and there's lots of detail there with the paint job. I think for me the only letdown is the fact that he can't do the signature kind of forward squatting, ready to pounce pose that you would expect of Wolverine because of his neck joint. I mean, this piece on the back of his head, it is soft, but it's still quite stiff, so you can't really get him to look forward that much. And if I just bring in the Marvel Legends figure, so this is what I'm talking about. This kind of hunched over, forward looking pose. This guy cannot pull this off, and that is probably the only thing I can fault about this guy. Everything else looks great. I'm definitely not a hardcore Playouts Kai collector. I only collect certain pieces that I like, and this is one of them. He looks really good. So if you like Wolverine and if you like this kind of over the top armorized design, then this guy is a really good pickup. He is a little bit on the expensive side. I got him from Hobby Link Japan for just over 13,000 yen. I think that translates to about 150 Australian dollars, or maybe like 120 or 110 US dollars. So he isn't cheap at all. But definitely a good piece to have if you like the character. And that concludes my review of the variant Playouts Kai Wolverine. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time for another toy review.